This is Adrian Erlandsson, drummer of At the Gates, The Haunted, and Lurking Fear, and you're watching RichardMetalFan.
Hey everyone, it's RichardMetalFan here. Welcome to a new episode of RichardMetalFan Interviews. This is episode number 10. And I can't believe we're at episode 10, my 10th interview so far. And this has been a long time coming, and after many delays for last couple months, I finally got him to do an interview today. It's finally worked out. And today we have, in my opinion, one of the most underrated drummers in metal, and probably like one of my favorites, period. And I get to sit down and talk to none other than Adrian Erlandsson from At the Gates and The Haunted. And today we're going to be talking about him getting into metal, what made him want to play drums. It's sort of like going through his history with At the Gates and The Haunted, and also some of his past bands. Like he also played in Cradle of Filth, then Paradise Lost, and is also a member of Brujeria and so many other bands to name. And boy, it's been a long time coming. So let's go talk to Adrian.
So what's up, guys? Here I am after many delays. We finally got to talk to Adrian Erlandsson. Adrian, how are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing well, thanks, as well as you can during this horrible pandemic that's sweeping across the planet. But yeah, all is good otherwise.
Awesome.
How are you?
Doing pretty well. So basically the format is I'm going to go through your entire catalog, but before we go into that, let's just dive right into the beginning. What were the first bands that got you into metal, and what made you want to pick up sticks and made you want to be
Judas Priest, AC/DC, Twisted Sister, and Motley Crue probably were the first bands. So what happened was that my family moved and became neighbors with his other family that had a kid the same age as me, and he played guitar, and there were no other kids around playing any instruments, and he said, you should play the drums. We could form a band together. And we sort of went back and forward over that, but he had an older brother that was really into heavy metal, and
Right.
he had Back in Black with AC/DC, and he played it to us. And after that, I was just like, you know what, I've got to get in on this. And I got back to my parents' house and said, Dad, I need a drum kit. And he was pretty supportive. Like a few months after that nagging session, I had my first drum kit, a Max Tone kit, 5-piece kit, and we set up to form my first band that same day, actually.
Right.
But of course, I couldn't play a single beat, and yeah, it took like quite a long time. It took like nearly a year for us to learn I Got Rock and Roll, or I Love Rock and Roll with Joan Jett.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard that. It's pretty basic.
I've heard of the song.
Yeah, so, but like the seed was firmly planted, and you know, like ever since, I've sort of loved the same songs since then, and I still go back to like Back in Black is one of my favorite albums of all time. So
Yeah.
I guess the albums that you first get into, they sort of stick with you through the years.
Yeah, I know, like you and your brother are both amazing drummers. Like, my opinion, one of the most underrated drummers in metal. Like, you guys are both amazing.
Thank you.
So how did At the Gates form? How did you get to know the guys? Because you guys formed in 1990, I believe, in Gothenburg.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they had Tompa, the singer, had another band called the Grotesque before.
Yeah.
And I met them on this bus to a heavy metal one of the first death metal festivals in Sweden, actually, called Bergslagsrocken, where Morbid Angel and Pestilence were headlining.
All right.
This was in the summer of 1990, and my friend he'd tape traded a little bit with Thomas, and he introduced me on that bus. And a few months later on, when I'd moved to Gothenburg, I got my chance to do the sort of audition for At the Gates, and we played Charred Remains by Autopsy. And then pretty soon after that, they said, right, well, you're in if you want to. And then we just started writing. They already had like a lot of songs that they've been working on with Jonas on drums, actually, that ends up playing bass now. So yeah, it was pretty intense those first few years. A lot of rehearsals and yeah.
Yeah, and then I think it was around 91 you put out your first EP called Gardens of Grief. I think that's a
That's,
solid EP. It's just, I think it just sounds just straight up death metal compared to like some of your later works.
yeah, I mean, that was initially meant to be a demo tape.
Yeah.
Yes, and it does actually exist in a demo tape format, but I think it's limited to like 100 copies or something on cassette that got sent around to record companies trying to strike a deal.
Right.
But there was a local record store in the town where we lived that said, we really like it, we'd like to put it out on vinyl. And so they released it as an EP.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It was also around the time you got signed to Peaceville at the time.
Well, that happened like a little, because the demo or in the vinyl format, Gardens of Grief, they ended up with a subdivision labeled to Peaceville called Death Records.
Right.
And they sort of discussed signing us. And even before we signed the deal, we booked the studio, went into the studio without knowing about how much we had in budget or anything, and started recording what was to become the Red in Skies Hours.
Yeah.
And
great debut.
That's right. And yeah, so the guy that we recorded it, we just sort of looked up where the nearest recording studio was, because Studio Sunlight, where we recorded the EP, wasn't available. So okay, we'll record in Gothenburg. Let's find a studio. Okay, Art Studio. That was the first one in the list. And this guy, he had no idea of what he was doing. It was, as you can hear in the sound, it's kind of sounds very, very raw now, but it was totally not what we intended it to be. But yeah, you live and learn. I think it's got its charms for what it is, you know.
Yeah, I noticed like on the back of the CD, like there's like 6 of you. I know like a guy named Jesper played violin on a few of these songs, but he was like listed as on the back picture as like as if he was part of the band.
Yeah, I can't really fully remember. He didn't come to any rehearsals or anything like that, so he wasn't like in the band. But I think it was, we wanted to see him to feel like included, so that's why we put it like that on the album listing.
Yeah.
He was part. We had him on a few gigs where he'd come in and play the intro. Instead of an intro tape, we'd have him play the violin.
Yeah, which I think that's awesome.
Yeah, but I mean, logistically, because there was no there was no way of traveling like for 6 people for us with the budgets that we had at that time. Right. And then he was busy doing his own thing. I think he had a kid as well. So
yeah.
So it was it was just not possible. And then also after a couple of albums, we took a different direction anyway, where the violin wouldn't necessarily have fitted in.
Yeah. I guess so. Later, would you guess more evolved with the next album with Fear I Kiss the Burning Darkness? Like, was there like pressure, like following up the Red Skies Hours to this?
No.
Right.
There was no. I'll tell you why. Because like the scene was so small at that time. It was like there was. I have no idea how many copies the first album sold, but it wasn't many. You know, we went on we did a few short tours in Netherlands, Belgium, and Germany together with Madame Bride and Anathema.
Awesome.
And I mean, it was such a small scene, and like I think the music that we were trying to play at the time was so far ahead of what we were actually physically able to do every night. And like a lot of the gigs, especially from my point of view, were just fucking disaster. Sorry.
Oh wow.
And it was, but like, you know, there were some really good ones. It was a really steep sort of learning curve for the band.
Right.
So when we did the second album, we wanted to make it even more twisted, odd time signatures, weird melodies, and weird riffs and stuff. Like I remember the guitar player Alf, he would write riffs and then record them on his 8-track and then play them backwards, and then work out what the guitar was doing backwards.
Oh, wow.
And then use that as another riff. Just, but it was, it was pretty creative. It was at that point for the second album, we finally had our own rehearsal room. So we, whereas for the first album, we sort of just shared one at the youth center.
All right. And I think it was also before you got to Terminal Spirit Disease, you formed like a little side project called Terror. Can you give a little brief history about that? Because it only existed for a few weeks from what I heard.
Yeah, or it wasn't actually ever meant to be like a side project or anything. It was just because we're really into Terrorizer, like everyone in the band. And we said it'd be cool to do just a straight up and down death metal tribute to Terrorizer.
Awesome.
And since we shared a rehearsal room with Dissection at the time, we asked John, who's no longer with us, if he would do the vocals, and he came in and did the vocals. And the lyrics are pretty silly on it, like, but it was all done tongue in cheek. We did it over an afternoon when we was set up to record Terminal Spirit Disease. Right.
And then we get to, of course, this album, which from what I heard was originally going to be an EP, but you decided to add some like live tracks to make it like just a full length. Like, what made y'all decide to do that?
Right. So that was, as far as I remember it, that had more to do with the record company, because they were like, they had to pay the same kind of costs in an EP. There's roughly the same kind of costs in making an EP to making an album, and they can't charge enough to make it be viable on the kind of volumes that we were selling. So that's why they said, how about you put some live tracks, or you have some other tracks to fill it out and make it an album. So it was kind of their decision more than ours, but also it fulfilled. That was the last album we had with Peaceville.
Yeah. And then I think it was also around the time '94 also that you formed another little side project called Heal. What's all that about?
So that wasn't actually a band of mine. It was some guys in the rehearsal complex where there was like loads of rehearsal rooms in one building, and it was just a band next door that I sort of made friends with, and they didn't have a drummer, and they asked me if I wanted to play drums on it, and sure. So I played with them for about 2 years, and we released an EP and one full-length album, but I haven't got either the EP or the album. They're really hard to get hold of.
Yeah, I have to like look on if they pop up on like eBay or something.
Yeah, I doubt they were even released internationally, to be honest.
Yeah. All right.
So
moving on, we get to the masterpiece, which needs no introduction, Slaughter of the Soul. Like this is I love this album. Probably my favorite At the Gates album. What was like even almost a little over 25 years later, what do you remember about making this album? And did you feel like you were onto something making it?
We had like a really horrible experience just leading up to the album.
Yeah.
Because we were set to go on this our first headline tour, and it turned out that the guy that was booking it, the promoter, he was just blowing hot smoke up our ass, and like the whole tour was basically a lie, and we invested like a lot of money to pay up front for the bus, and he was gonna reimburse us after the first gig. Of course, after the first gig, he got robbed.
Damn.
Yeah, and he didn't have any money, so the tour just got stranded after the second gig, and then we tried to solve it, but it was just a shambles. So when we finally got back to Sweden, it was like it just filled with fury, and I guess it sort of came out in the music. We wanted to write like a really straightforward, no frills, just like really hard album.
Right.
And we rehearsed like about 4 to 5 times a week at this point. And I remember the twins coming in with Anders and Jonas were writing the riffs, and they were coming in. One day they'd have one song, and the next day there'd be another song, and it came together really quickly. And when we were in the studio, it was just we just put ourselves under intense pressure, like to record, because this was before you recorded onto computers. So like everything had to be just like in a solid take, because you couldn't. It was really hard on our budget to sort of drop in. If you made a mistake, you had to go to the beginning of the song again. You couldn't just like, oh right, let's drop in there. You couldn't do that then. So I think like when we did Blinded by Fear, we wanted it to be like opener. Yeah, we wanted it to be like really machine-like on the drums. And I think I did something like 80 takes on that song, because it's like, no, you hit the bell on the ride, stop, like when I'm like 3/4 through the song, like back to the beginning. And yeah, it was just, but afterwards it was like, fuck, this is pretty heavy. We were really pleased with it at the time. That was also the point where the band sort of started getting a little bit more attention worldwide. And we came on our first American tours to the States. First one with Morbid Angel, and then one with Napalm Death.
Did you all play Atlanta during that time period?
Sorry?
Did you all play at like the old Masquerade back in the day?
I think we did. I played at the old Masquerade before, but I can't remember if it was with Cradle of Filth or if it was with. I think we did with Morbid Angel at the Gates and Dissection. I think that tour was there.
Yeah, and you also recently did this last year. Played this whole album on 70,000 Tons of Metal. What was it like revisiting this album?
I mean, most of those songs are still, because it's such a short album, that most of the songs are part of our live set anyway.
Yeah, like Blinded by Fear, Suicide Nation, just some classic songs. Nice.
Yeah. I mean, we some of the other songs, like the instrumental songs, were like a lot harder to perform live. But I think we had when we played it on the 70,000 Tons, there was a storm actually.
Oh, wow.
Just as we were set to go on stage, and it was complete storm, and they had to actually turn the ships around because the rain protectors they'd put up over the stage, they were blowing off in the heavy wind. And so we ended up going on like nearly 2 hours later.
Wow.
And there was something wrong with the announcement. Something with the announcement over the speakers that not everyone knew that we were on. So like a lot of people were pissed that they missed the set. Wow. But and then of course all of last year was just sitting at home and just crossing out dates that we had, because all of last year was 25th anniversary for the album, and we were gonna do like a worldwide tour for it.
And I was planning on seeing you at Psycho Las Vegas to play this album, so fingers crossed it happens in August. Hopefully the world can get its shit together by then. We'll see. I keep my fingers crossed that's gonna happen. I don't know. I'm a little bit of a pessimist when it comes to these things, but we'll see, I guess. And you guys were putting out like albums like year after year after year, from like the EP up to Slaughter of the Soul. You guys were pretty consistent up till then.
So what happened was we did we hadn't really done any longer tours up till when Slaughter of the Soul came out.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we're on tour for like nearly 6 months.
Yeah.
And we came home and we had just fucking exhausted, and
Yeah.
no one can pay their bills because we didn't make a fucking penny on
Yeah.
those tours.
Yeah. Was that
And,
also around the time when you all called it quits? Was that one of the key
Yeah.
factors?
Yeah, so that happened in '96, in the summer of '96,
Yeah.
and we just like Anders phoned up and said, "Look, I'm leaving the band. Basically, I can't." He couldn't deal with the touring. He didn't want to do music full time anymore. So he left, and then it sort of didn't like seem to make sense to carry the band on anymore.
Right.
And after that, the next day, I formed the Haunted together with Jensen.
Yeah.
And At the Gates just sort of, was on hiatus till like 2008.
Yeah.
when
or
we did
something, which
the
we'll get to there. We'll get to there.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
Yeah, but I think it was also, from what I saw in the notes, before you got the Haunted, you had a Decameron and Hyperhug.
Yeah,
I can't even pronounce the names.
Right. So like I played with the same way that like I played with Hale. I played with a few other bands like Decameron, for example. They are the drummer that left Decameron. He ended up playing in Dissection.
Oh hell yeah!
And yeah, so they asked me did I want to play with them, and I only had the Haunted then, and we weren't all that active, so it seemed like a good idea to, why not? And but for various reasons, it never got anywhere, and there was never any new songs written. I think we recorded a cover of a Maiden song, 2 Minutes to Midnight. That ended up on it ended up on a compilation, but that was it that I did with the band.
All right.
And then the other band, Hyperhug, was another band from Gothenburg that was kind of like a bit more like early Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Huh. Wow, that's interesting.
And they asked, was I interested in playing with them, and I did for a bit, and they're super cool guys, and it was really good fun, playing like a different type of music and stuff. But same thing again. It never went anywhere, and sooner or later you have to get like a normal job, and
Right. And so, how did the Haunted come to form?
So that was the day. Well, actually, a few months before At the Gates split up, a friend of mine, Jensen, who used to play the guitar in Seance. I don't know if you heard of them. They released a few albums.
I need to check them out.
Yeah. But he moved to Gothenburg from this other town, and he said, would it be cool to start summing up? And I said, well, I don't really have time at the moment because At the Gates was pretty busy. And then At the Gates obviously split up, and I called Jensen. That was my second call, actually, after I got told that At the Gates, so I'm calling it quits.
Right.
And the next day, we were in the At the Gates rehearsal room and writing the first few songs. So it was immediate. And then Jonas, that used to play bass in At the Gates, came in on bass in The Haunted.
Yeah.
And briefly, we had a guitar player that used to be in Dissection on guitars.
Yeah.
Called John. Not John that passed away, but the other guitar player. And pretty soon after that, John, it was obvious that John wasn't up to it. So then Anders started hanging out at the rehearsals, and he was all of a sudden interested in playing music again. And he ended up playing the second guitar in The Haunted.
Awesome. And I heard,
go on. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say what you were saying.
Yeah. So the vocalist Peter Dolving, he was also rehearsing with a band that were in that same building that I talked about before. called Mary Beach Jane, and I was going to fill in on drums for them for this tour they were doing supporting Biohazard in Europe in early '94, I think. And I started rehearsing with them, and anyway, I got to know him, and so when we asked him did he want to be the vocalist in the Haunted, he was straight in. So that's how the first lineup of the Haunted came together.
Right, and then you put out your self-titled debut album in '97, but it was also around that time, from what I heard, you left the band due to like issues with the record contract or something.
Yeah, so yeah, it was a load of, it was basically an old At the Gates contract that the Haunted had to take over.
Oh wow.
It was a load of legal shit that ended up, and I was going through some shit in my personal life then as well that just made me like doubt whether I wanted to play drums on that level, you know, with that kind of commitment.
Right.
And yeah, so I actually ended up leaving, but I was only out of the band for about 6 months, and then I rejoined again just before the album came out.
Right. Wow, I didn't know that.
And yeah, and it was during that time when I was out of the band that I played with Decameron and Hyperhag.
Oh wow, so that kind of was like after
yeah.
that.
And then when I got back to the Haunted, we did a few shows, but like not really any proper touring, because the offers that came in needed backing from the record company, and they were just like, no, there's no budget to send you on tour. So then all the tours fell through, and at that same time, we did a festival in Holland called Dynamo Festival.
Yeah,
and that's when I met.
Online.
I met some of the guys from Cradle there.
Yeah.
And since we'd toured with them in the past with At the Gates, they were one of the opening bands on one of the tours we did. So I was talking to Danny and Stuart at the time.
Yeah.
And we got on pretty well at that festival. And then like a few weeks later on, the phone rang and they said, did I want to come to England to play drums in Cradle of Filth?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was also before Cradle, you were in Niflheim in '98. What could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so it depends if you ask them or me.
Yeah.
They're sort of like pretty secretive about the fact that I was in the band and then joined Cradle of Filth.
Yeah.
But yeah, I ended up, I was with them for like about 7 or 8 months or so.
Yeah.
And then when it came to time for me to move to England, obviously it wasn't possible anymore. And then,
right.
Oh, you're joining Cradle of Filth. I'll fuck off then.
Right. All right. Well, have you lived in England since you moved to join Cradle? Have you always lived down there?
Yeah, since '99. Yeah, I've been here now.
Yeah, I could definitely tell living after there, you have a little bit of a UK accent.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Swedish one is never going to go away completely.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mixture of the two.
Yeah.
But then, of course, in '99, you joined Cradle, and then I think this was your first work with them from the Cradle to Enslave EP. What was that like?
Yeah,
I think you played on a couple tracks.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure if the second one made it, actually. I don't have a copy of that EP myself, so
Yeah.
but definitely of Dark Blood and Fucking was the first sort of studio recording I did with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that and after that I sort of moved here. I met my wife and bought a house, and life sort of moved along pretty nicely.
Yeah. Yeah, then of course we turn over to the new millennium. We got Midian, which is probably one of my favorite Cradle albums. Like, what was it like making this album after nearly 20 years later, or 21 now?
I mean, there was obviously a big change for me, because I didn't have to sort of look for a new job the whole time. but like rather than the drums were now my livelihood, you know, and we rehearsed like five to six times a week with Gradle, because it's before everyone had sort of recording setups at home.
Yeah.
And we'd just meet in the rehearsal room. Someone would have a riff. This riff maybe goes with this riff, and we'd sort of build all the songs in the rehearsal room. And with 6 people in the room,
Yeah.
sometimes the guy that owned the rehearsal studio would be in there having his opinions. Some people drinking, some people smoking. It was tough, man, to get their songs together.
Yeah.
It was really tough, but we did it, and that was the first and only album that we did, that we wrote the songs like fully in the rehearsal room. All the following albums I was part of with Cradle were written sort of in people's home studios, and then like you meet in the rehearsal room. Oh, I've got this finished song now. Let's put it, like, try the drums, try the arrangements and stuff. So Midian was very unique in that sense.
Yeah.
In fact, it came to, that was also the first album ever that I recorded with a click track.
Oh.
And I had like never recorded with a click track before, and nor had some of the guitar players in the band at the time.
Right.
So none of them could actually play the guitars to the click.
Wow.
So I had to play the drums with the click and hum the guitars in my head, and not have any backing track, and just play. That's how Midian was done.
Oh.
I recorded the drums completely with just tick took 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 tick took 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 in my playing in my
hard
head.
to like try to do that and try to while trying to follow the metronome. Yeah.
That wasn't the hard part. It was like humming the riffs in the head for an entire song, and some of those songs are like nearly 8 minutes long.
Yeah. Then I guess what you were saying.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Awesome. And then in 2001, you put out the Bittersweets to Succubee or Succubi EP. What's all this? I love this EP. Tell me about making this one.
So there had been a few members changes at this point, I believe, from Midian.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's at that point actually where the members changes happened. I think Rob left shortly after the Bittersweets album, so there was like there was quite a lot of turmoil in the band at the time.
Yeah.
But we on that album we started rehearsing less and less, and we were like, people would write stuff at home, like Paul Allender and Martin would send me guitar parts, and I would write the drum tracks at home on my electric kit, and then we'd meet like twice a week in the rehearsal room and say, does this work in a live setting? And then so that was it was very different to how Midian was put together.
Awesome. And then in 2003 we get to Damnation in a Day. I love this one. What's that about?
I mean, that was quite a big step for us, because it was we signed to Sony Records.
Yeah, I heard it's a big label.
Yeah, so it was a big step for the band. There was like proper production. There's like an full orchestra playing on the album. There's a full choir singing on it. It was, I think I had like 2 weeks alone in the studio to do the drums. That's like unheard of. It was just like, however long time you need, you do one song per day. So it was pretty relaxed vibe to do the album. And then it followed with pretty intense touring. I think we did 2 European tours, and we did the Ozfest in the States, and then we did a long tour in the States with Type O Negative.
And I'd
And
love to see more.
yeah, that was a pretty good, sick tour actually with
Yeah,
Moonspell, Cradle, and Type O.
yeah, that was like
Although
that was all in 2003 still, or 04.
that's 2003.
Yeah, yeah, I was only 9 years old. I would love to have seen it.
Yeah. So yeah, that was pretty intense. It was intense because I'm still a massive Type O fan, and a lot of times at night when Type O would play before Cradle, and then Pete Steele would sit behind me on my hardware case and drink wine and shout insults at me during the gig.
Yeah,
But yeah, pretty incredible tour. We got some great friends from that tour.
awesome. And
To
then of
this
course,
day.
yeah, in 2004 you put out, in my opinion, one of my favorite Cradle albums, Nymphetamine. I mean, I just
Yeah.
love the album, like the songs like Gilded Cunt, Nymphetamine Fix. Like, what was that whole experience and like album cycle like? This.
So with this album, we had more of a producer involved, like Rob Caggiano, who we worked with. He plays guitar in Volbeat at the moment.
Yeah,
But he used to be in Anthrax then,
yeah.
and he recorded parts of Damnation and a Day with us as a
Damn, I
producer.
didn't even know that.
Yeah, and then on Nymphetamine, he sort of came over earlier to England, and he was more involved in like the arrangements of the songs and the production and stuff, and he would suggest like different drum parts. Now that fill ain't working, try this instead, and stuff. So that was but he's a pretty level-headed guy and like a complete metalhead. So he was like, it was really cool having his input.
Awesome. And then I think your last album with Cradle was the Thornography. So yeah, I thought it was a good
Yeah.
album, but I think it was like you left right before that. What was the reason for leaving Cradle?
Well-
It was
well,
2006.
Yeah, so like that was when I mean, I can't really tell you about all the reasons because
All right.
of like legal stuff, but
All right.
like basically we just didn't get on anymore in the band, and it was I mean, a band like Cradle at that time, there's so many other people that are interested and have opinions of how things should run aside from the guys in the band.
All right.
And you know, like record companies that want to see a certain type of revenue because they've already spent that much money, so it's got to be a certain way. And there was like a lot of stuff that just tension in the band, you know, that was unhealthy. And when he finally got to it that you know, like it's probably best that we part ways, and it was like a mutual decision. They said that we think it's best that you know, we go separate ways. So I said, yeah, sure, it's
Awesome. So
and you know, like a lot of people wonder whether there's like animosity and it's Danny a cunt and shit like that. It's not got to, that wasn't the reason. It was, you know, we just didn't get along as people anymore, and the management as well. We just didn't get on anymore.
all right. Right. And
Yeah.
then before At the Gates, we got back together in 2007. What were some of the other bands you were part of during like 06, 07?
Okay, so like after Cradle, me and my wife had already formed a band called Nemhane, like a punk band.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like the Misfits a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Like we like to think of it as a mixture of Monster Magnet and Misfits, perhaps.
Wow.
Perhaps a bit of Credence thrown in there, but yeah. We did an album with that, and then I played drums for Brujeria.
Yeah, I love those guys.
Yeah, so I played drums for them from 2006 to 2010 or 11 even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
sorry, you were saying.
and Yeah, I did various sort of session recordings during those years as well. I can't remember all of them now, to be honest. But
Yeah.
yeah,
You know, it's funny because like in Bergeria, that Nick Barker, who you replaced in Cradle, actually replaced you in Bergeria. I thought that was kind of funny.
yeah. So I replaced him. I replaced him in Brujeria, and then he replaced me again.
Yeah. Wow.
But
That's
with that
funny.
band, it's kind of like if you're a member and you left and it wasn't on bad terms, it's possible that you'll be playing with them again.
Yeah.
I've done a few shows with them after that where Barker hasn't been available. I've stepped in and helped out.
Awesome. So that, yeah, and I think it was also like right before the year before you left Cradle, you had a band called 1210 Method. I think you only did the one EP back in 08. It's called Art of Not Falling. What's that?
Yeah, no. So that was actually after Cradle.
Oh yeah.
That was actually after Cradle, and
I
that
thought
was
it was before.
No, that was after. And to be first, that band was called Needle Eye, and but we recorded it, and then there were some disputes between two guitar players, and it was decided that the band's going to be called something else instead.
Yeah.
And yeah, at that point I'd already left, and
Right, and then it was also in
yeah.
it was also in 2007 that At the Gates reformed. What made you all decide to come back?
So it was actually 2008.
Yeah.
It was 2008 where we did the reunion. I know, like on some websites, it says that it's 2007, but it was 2008.
Right.
And we just basically been talking about if it'd be, because the way the band ended was like really, really silly.
Yeah.
And had we been a bit more mature at the time, we'd have said, okay, let's just take like a year without doing any band stuff and then get back to it. And because we didn't, we sort of felt like it could be cool to play together again.
Yeah.
But we decided, okay, it's going to be only during the spring, summer, and autumn of 2008, and we booked this whole tour. Of course, when we came off stage at the last gig, we're all like, oh no, why have we said it? We can't do anything more. And we sort of, we felt like complete, but at the same time, I know that a few of us were like, oh, fuck, we shouldn't have said anything. And then, so then we didn't do anything till 2011. We got an offer to play this festival again.
Right.
And then we decided, fuck it, we'll just carry it on. We love doing it. People that come to see us love seeing the band. Why shouldn't it exist? So
right.
Yeah.
And then right, and I think it was also in 07 you formed a Netherboard Bird. Tell me, I think you were in the band from like 2007 to 2010.
Right. So Netherbird is a Swedish band, and like I was never actually a member of the band.
Yeah.
They're just close friends of mine, and I ended up playing on, I can't remember, I think 3 albums or something that I recorded for them. Yeah, so I was never actually a member of the band.
Oh, I didn't even know that. And then you had a Samastron.
Samsas Traum. That's another session project that I recorded for. It's this German goth band who asked me if they liked Cradle. They heard that I'm no longer in the band. Do you want to play drums on the recording? And they just simply hired me to play there.
Okay. Yeah, and it was also, so around 2009, you actually joined Paradise Lost. How did you hook up with those guys?
That's right. Yeah. So like I'm an old Paradise Lost fan. Like they were signed to Peaceville as well at the same time that At the Gates were, and like we have like a lot of friends in common, and it just happened that Jeff, that plays bass and sings in Carcass,
Yeah.
he's also in Brujeria with me at the same time, and he said, "How about why don't you apply to play in Paradise Lost? They haven't got a drummer at the moment." And then I actually met Greg in a nightclub in London at the time, and we were hanging out, drinking a few beers, but there was no talk about me joining the band. But then I got a few months later, I got Greg's number from Jeff, and I texted him, "Hey, are you still looking for a drummer? If so, I'm interested." And I learned 4 or 5 songs, and then drove up to Bradford in Yorkshire. It's about 200 miles from London, and set up the kit, and we rehearsed the first song, and they said, "Well, look, you can clearly play it if you're in. If you want, you're in." So, and I had such a good time playing with Paradise Lost, and it was, it's like a party the whole time.
All right.
Party atmosphere the whole time, and the sense of humor in the band is like we're just from the same era,
Awesome.
And playing together was a real challenge, actually, because like usually I've sort of played with like sort of faster death metal type bands, whereas this was like slow and doomy and so in parts it was like really challenging, but not from a physical point of view, just that it's so different to what I've played before. But it was a real experience, and I'm really happy that I was part of it.
Right. Is it like depending on what band you're playing with? Is there like a different like mindset or different like vibe? Is like with this band I have to like be like this, or is there like a usual formula depending on what the project that you're in?
Well, I mean that's sort of set out by the songs.
Right.
So if the songs are like, of course, with Paradise Lost songs, that's slower songs, like moodier songs, like it wouldn't work to play like the At the Gates beat over it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my goal as a drummer. I think the drum should fit in with the music, and that makes it really a lot more interesting as a musician to be part of different style projects, like Brujeria to Paradise Lost. It's like a mind-bending change. So even you compare like Cradle to At the Gates, it's very different drumming.
Yeah, it's two sides of the coin.
Yeah.
All right, and then 2011 you joined Valenfire. You released a couple albums with that. How'd you hook up with those guys? Because you were in the band for a couple years during that time.
Right. So Valenfire is the project of Greg that plays guitar in Paradise Lost.
Oh wow! I never knew that.
Yeah. So he said he's doing like a death metal project to honor the memory of his dad that had just passed away, and he wondered if I wanted to play drums. So that was that, and then there was just a few friends of his and mine that ended up joining the band. But we never played live much. I think I did 3 or 4 shows with Valenfire in total.
Right.
It was sort of more like a studio project.
Right. So you just did like the Desecration, Fragile Kings, and then I think you did Splinters in 2014.
Yeah, Splinters was the last album I did.
All right.
Because it got to a point in that summer of 2014 when I was in At the Gates, The Haunted, Paradise Lost, Brujeria, and Valenfire.
Yeah.
And all bands wanted to gig, and it was just I can't cope with it.
Yeah, which we'll get to.
I have to have like 60 songs fresh in my mind the whole time, because there's no time to rehearse. It just wasn't possible anymore.
but I think it was also in 2012 you did your first album with Paradise Lost, Tragic Idol. What was that like? Was there kind of like pressure being like, this is what I have to do, or did like the rest of the band wanted you to bring your own mix? Same thing with like the other
Right. So,
Cradle and other bands.
so, so like previously, like Greg is he's not a drummer, but he's very good at programming drums. So he had like a lot of ideas of how he wanted the drums to be. But I did demos on all the songs. So he sent me the song with his drum ideas and then without drums. And I wrote my own parts for the whole album. And then what ended up on the album was a mixture of his and mine, or mine and his, depending on which song. And then when I recorded it, it was sort of like it was pretty much sort of free hands, really. Like, oh, I have a different drum fill for this section. Yeah, sure, go ahead with, see what it sounds like. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and that was also, I think in 2013 you actually rejoined The Haunted. What made you decide? How did you get back in the band?
So, like me and Jensen, that we formed The Haunted in '96. Yeah. So since then we've been like really close friends. And he phoned me. I was actually in Chile with Brujeria, and he phoned me on FaceTime and said, "Look, we've lost the guitar player and the drummer. Like I've found another guitar player called Ola, this internet kid, who's really, who's amazing, and he's actually interested in joining. Would you be interested in coming back on drums?" And I was like, because then I was mainly touring with Paradise Lost. I was kind of thinking, oh, it'd be fucking great to play some heavier stuff again.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, I love playing with Jensen. We got really good chemistry together. And also coming back to the band that you helped to form in the first place, it was kind of special. So
awesome. And then I think you did your first album, Dub 'Em Back. This was Eye at the Storm, and I think in Exit Wounds. I think they both came out the same year. I think one of them was an EP.
Yeah, Eye of the Storm was just a 7-inch.
Oh, right.
Yeah, like and yeah, it was just a 7-inch that came out before Exit Wounds.
All right. Then I think it was also the same year you released the comeback album from At the Gates at Worth Reality. What made you decide to like make a new album again after so long?
It was it'd taken those years of reunion touring since 2011 to sort of go like, right, we're ready to write something new. And I remember Anders, Jonas, and Tompa, who wrote the songs, were really really cautious of like not getting trapped in trying to write Slaughter of the Soul Part 2, but rather that it's like a fresh start to the band. We're back and we have something new to bring to the table, rather than try to recreate an old album that we wouldn't top anyway.
Right.
So so it was of course I live in England and they live in Sweden, so it was like a lot of the drum parts were written here on my electric kit.
Right.
I don't know if you can see it, just behind here.
Yeah, it looks fucking awesome.
So yeah, so that's so we would send demos back and forwards, and then we'd meet and rehearse it before we recorded it.
Awesome. And then 2015, you did your last album with Paradise Lost, The Plague Within. And this was actually funny enough, my introduction to the band. And I went and checked out all their other stuff and been a fan since.
So that was actually, that was recorded in 2014, the end of 2014.
Yeah.
Just before the touring for the At the Gates album started.
All right. Yeah.
And that was actually the reason why I couldn't be in Paradise Lost anymore, because
with like all the bands that you're in.
Right. So but At the Gates was touring properly, and I think we did like 150 something shows for At War with Reality, and it just collided repeatedly with Paradise Lost calendar. And I eventually just said, look, it doesn't work anymore. I think it's best you find someone else on drums. And they sort of agreed, and they had been thinking the same thing. So it was, like as sad as it was to leave, it was kind of a relief not to have to play that many shows and be in two places at once. Like a lot of, we played a festival, there's 70 tons of metal.
Yeah.
One year I played it. I think it was called Barge to Hell.
Oh,
But
wow.
it was Brujeria, it was Paradise Lost, and At the Gates. So
Damn.
I played 6 sets on that on that journey back and forwards.
Yeah, it's gotta be hard to like memorize everything.
Yeah, and then also it's like when the calendars collide, it's like you feel shit for letting the side down with like Paradise Lost in this case.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and then 2016 you formed Lurking Fear. I'm just curious about that. I haven't done more of my research. Give a little rundown of that.
Right. So Lurking Fear is me and Tompa and Jonas, the new guitar player in At the Gates.
Yeah.
And basically what happened after when Anders left the band when Anders left At the Gates after At War with Reality,
Yeah.
we weren't really sure when the next At the Gates album was going to be, and we were talking about it'd be cool to do like an old school death metal project.
Wow.
And yeah, that's what we did with 2 friends that I played together with in another band called Shit System before.
Yeah.
And also the bass players from Dysphere. He was in Edge of Sanity before. I don't know if you ever heard of them.
I love Edge of Sanity. It's like one of my favorite songs is Black Tears.
Yeah. So but it's just for the love of old school death metal, really. And I was actually set to be in Sweden today to start the recording of the new album.
Yeah.
Of the second Lurking Fear album, but due to the pandemic, it's like virtually impossible to travel out of the UK.
Oh wow. Have you ever tried like tracking in with your kid in the studio, or is?
Yeah, I mean, Lurking Fear isn't that kind of band. We have to be in the same room and we have to play together in the same room. And also, you can't with that kind of music, you can't really do it on an electric kit. It has to be a live kit.
Right.
So although I could do it here, it wouldn't be the same feel.
Right. Then 2017, you went back in the studio with The Haunted and make Strength in Numbers. Tell me about that.
That's right. So that was also like a really intense period, because we've been doing like lots of touring with At the Gates, and then it just sort of stopped, and we didn't know what was going to happen. But then we before The Haunted, we went in the studio with The Haunted. We had sort of undercover, without telling anyone, we'd sort of regrouped At the Gates, and Jonas was writing all the material. So we were writing At the Gates and The Haunted at the same time. So it was really intense. all the drum parts were written in here in my little drum house, and then we recorded. That was actually recorded here in the UK together with Russ Russell. That he's done like a lot of Napalm Death stuff, and he actually did To Drink from the Night itself as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
like this is a good album too.
yeah. So yeah, it was a bit head splitting like with the amount of there's like a lot of songs on both those albums too.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
think there's
they
like 12 songs.
were written pretty much at the same time.
Yeah.
It was yeah.
Yeah, and this was actually, I remember seeing you on this album cycle. You played it with Behemoth, and then I saw you a couple years ago with Amon Amarth. That was like, what was that whole album cycle like for this album?
I mean, that's the most touring we've done for any album, I think. What we did To Drink from the Night Itself, like tons of festivals, and then those 2 full US tours. And we
Yeah.
did a full European tour with Behemoth as well.
Yeah, I think it was the same lineup as I saw you on saw in Atlanta in 2018.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And I mean, it's really because if we were touring on our own, or if we were headline, we'd be playing much smaller places. So it's cool. It's cool. I think from a person that comes to visit the gig, it's cooler to see it in a bigger place where you can have like a proper light show, and the PA is better, and it's, you know, like it's an all-round nicer experience, I think.
Yeah. Do you prefer
And
to
then
play
also,
bigger? Yeah, you're saying. Sorry again.
and yeah, and also you're getting like when you get to those venues, like a lot of the facilities are better, like the stage is better, the PA is better. It's, you know, like the whole experience is better.
Yeah. Sorry, and like I said, I met you on. I think I was the guy. I remember the first time I met you. I had you sign like a bunch of CDs, like from all the bands that you were in. And
yeah.
Yeah, that was a great experience. Like, but what I was saying before is there like a difference with like the type of crowd that you played, because you played with Behemoth, you played with Amon Amarth. Do you notice like a different like crowd reaction depending on who you play with?
Yeah, I mean both fans for Behemoth and Amon Amarth are pretty dedicated to their favorite band, you know. So it was like you can't at a level where At the Gates is, you can't come out and assume that everyone has heard of you before or even heard your music.
Yeah.
So we just come out and play as hard as we can and as well as we can for like half an hour, 35 minutes. And particularly on the Amon Amarth tour, I was sharing my brother's drum kit.
Yeah.
And it was it was just all round like a family reunion on tour. So it's kind of
brothers gotta look out for each other and help each other.
Yeah, totally. And had it been another band instead of a Arch Enemy, I would have played on Grand Major's kit in front for sure.
Wow.
So it's I've got a lot to thank him for in that case.
Awesome. So I heard like now I mean At the Gates is finished working on the new album. Like if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we have recorded, and the follow-up to To Drink from the Night Itself. I can't tell you what the new album is called yet.
All right.
But the initials is TNOB, and then let's see if you can work that out later. But anyway,
I can't even.
Yeah, but it's a lot. It's a crisper production. But the songs have a much wider spectrum. There's like some really we're exploring the boundaries of what the band can do musically on this album. So there's some really heavy stuff, but there's some like stuff that will turn people's heads as well. So it's been like a really creatively interesting album. So I can't wait for it to come out. It's sounding awesome.
Right.
But that should tentatively be out during the spring. I don't know if Corona will affect the release date.
Who knows?
But but we've been working with or Tompa has been working with the cover artist, so all the artwork and everything is ready.
Awesome.
And Yeah, yeah. So we were going to do a video together this weekend, actually.
Yeah.
Where we were going to, like, you know, like the traditional play together, headbang and look hard kind of video. And due to Corona, I couldn't be there, so they've had to shuffle the order of the videos in the recording, and hopefully we're going to do the play, the performance video, as they call it, in April, just before the album's due.
All right. So that's pretty much it. So before we go, I just want to thank you for this interview. After so many delays, I'm glad that we finally got this. Is there just anything else you would like to promote? I mean, obviously, thanks to a virus that I don't want to name on this channel, touring's out of the equation. But once this is all said and done, we can see you out on the road with whatever, with At the Gates or The Haunted.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you so much for the support, and good luck with your channel. And
Awesome.
thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you on the road. I guess in Atlanta again.
Yeah, or hopefully Psycho in Vegas if it happens. I'm waiting.
Fingers crossed for that.
Yeah. So everyone, Adrian Erlandsson from At the Gates and the Haunted. We'll see you next time.
Cheers, man.